Isaac Newton's Life Story by Julia Gallagher, Sarah Stroud, and Ashley Blumensorr. He was born on Christmas Day in 1642 at Woolsthorpe, which is a village in southwestern Lincolnshire, England. He initially lived with his mother, but when he was 3, his mom left him with his grandmother. At age 5, he was sent to the village school, and then when he was 12, he was sent to the King's School in Grantham, England, and lived in the home of a pharmacist named Clark. When he stayed with Clark, he built wooden models, carved sundials, drew, and built a water clock. He also once built a model of his own windmill. When he was 16, his mom took him back home to be a farmer. At this time, his creativity really began to show. At age 19, he wanted to go to college, so he enrolled in Trinity College in Cambridge, England. In 1665, he received a Bachelor's of Arts degree and went on to get his master's, but the university closed due to the plague. From 1666 to 1667, he did basic experiments and thinking of his later works on calculus, gravitation, and optics. It was at this time the infamous apple falling myth occurred, where an apple fell on Newton's head when he was sitting under an apple tree, and he was suddenly inspired to come up with the theory of gravity. Although there's no evidence that this occurred, it seems to be factual. From there on, he explored theories of motion and gravity. Cambridge reopened in 1667, and Newton returned to study there for his master's. He was given a fellowship and was paid to study there. It is said that Newton often forgot to eat because of how engrossed in his studies he was. At age 27, he became a professor of mathematics. Then, in 1671, he built an improved version of the reflecting telescope, which led him to join the Royal Society of London. In 1684, he wrote a 3-volume book about the orbit of the planet, the 3 laws of motion, and the law of gravitation. It was known as Principia, and soon became the most influential book on physics and possibly all of science. This made him well known on an international scale. It presented 3 ideas still so fundamental to modern science. 1, that a stationary body will stay stationary unless an external force is applied to it. 2, that force is equal to mass times acceleration, and a change in motion is proportional to the force applied. And 3, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In 1689, he runs for Parliament and wins a seat, serving for 1 year. Then, in 1696, he got a job at the Mint as a warden, where he recalls old coins so they can be replaced. Around 1693, Newton's health began to fail, and his mind seemed to wander. Some said that he had a mental breakdown, but others think that he might have been experiencing mercury poisoning from some of his experiments. In 1696, he was completely well. After a few years of this, he was appointed Master of the Mint in 1700. 3 years later, he was elected the President of the Royal Society. In 1705, he became the first British scientist to be knighted. He was knighted by Queen Anne, and this is when he received the name Sir Isaac Newton. Because he received his mother's property after her death, he became very wealthy by this time. He published 2 major works, one being Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy, and the second being called Optics. Newton died in his sleep in London on March 20, 1727. His body was buried in Westminster Abbey. Here are some fun facts about Newton's life that you probably didn't know. First, Newton was born prematurely and was not expected to live. Also, his father was a farmer and died 3 months before he was born. Newton made lifelong enemies with anyone who criticized him. Also, he was a very religious man. One of Newton's teeth, the most valuable tooth in the world, was sold for $3,600. Finally, Newton estimated that the world will end no earlier than 2060. Newton is and will always be remembered as a brilliant man whose work in science and math continues to influence our world today.